This is my short video tip, 3 steps to success. And there's 3 steps that you can take that will increase your chances of having a successful painting. And those 3 steps are draw, plan, and paint. More specifically, when I'm referring to 3 steps to success, and I talk about draw, plan, paint, I'm referring to drawing shapes, planning your values and edges before you begin to paint. Here's a photograph that I used for a recent painting titled Early Snow. There's a lot of things I like about this reference photo and this subject matter, but there's some things that I want to change in my composition. This is a bit of a problem-solving stage in the painting process, and the best place to work these details out are in your sketchbook. This is where I start to draw some of the major shapes, start to plan where my values are going to be, and start to think about the edges in my painting, in particular the soft edges, before I begin my painting process. And why would I do that? It's because some of those decisions that I'm going to make in the problem-solving process are going to influence the overall painting process and the approach that I take to any particular painting. It's not always going to be the same. This is my sketchbook before I've put in the fourth sketch and value study. And if you look, I have 2 sketches and a value study. And in this thumbnail here with an ink pen, what I've done is I've drawn just the major shapes that I see. I've started to define where the horizon line is going to be and the tree line and some of the tree placement. And these are some of the decisions that I'll make when I'm in the sketchbook phase and when I'm doing my problem solving. I'll adjust positioning of some objects or some of the elements of the composition. I might add some things to it. In this case, I moved the evergreen trees a little bit to the left. I've added a little bit more land in the back, the rolling hills, and I've made the tree to the right a little more pronounced. So here you can see I've drawn some major shapes. Now I'm just going to indicate the placement of these evergreen trees. So these are not detailed renderings with an ink pen. You can see that they're very quick sketches, and I'm more concerned with placement of objects, things such as the horizon line, where the horizontal planes meet the vertical planes. And it gives me just enough information to make informed decisions when I begin my painting. I used to be very particular with when I work my sketchbook. I'd measure the boxes. In fact, I created a template to make all the boxes the same. I don't do that anymore. Some of the boxes are larger than others, some are smaller, the edges aren't always perfect, they're not always a perfect square, but it helps add to the looseness and I think lets me be more creative. So here you can see the major shapes that I've drawn, the positioning of the trees, and I've started to indicate where some of the horizontal and vertical planes are and where the horizon lines are. And this is the information that I need to make informed decisions when I go into my finished painting. Once I've drawn my shapes with my pen and I've got a composition that I'm happy with, I've moved some elements around and now I'm happy with my composition, I'm going to begin planning my values. So I still think about shapes when I'm doing this, and in this case I'm thinking about where are the lighter values going to be, where the lightest white's going to be, and I'm going to put a big light valued wash down here, and it in itself is a large shape. I dried this quickly, and now I'm coming back with a middle value. So I'm going to indicate where some of my middle values are going to be in the composition. And I'll stress that this is a problem-solving phase. These aren't intended to be hung on your wall. And you'll be surprised once you accumulate a sketchbook of them how interesting they can be when you go back and look at them. But be loose with this, experiment, and do as many as you'd like until you have a game plan that you're comfortable with. And don't be afraid to use these as reference when you're doing your painting. Don't just lock into a photograph and try and copy a photograph. Use your the information you use in your problem solving process to help guide you through your painting process. And now I've dried this once again. Now I've applied some middle values, and now I'm coming back with darker values. And in this stage with the landscape, one of the things I'm concerned about is being able to define what's foreground, what's middle ground, what's background, so that the viewer can understand that. And one of the best ways to do that is with value. So in this instance, I'm planning my darker values in the foreground, my middle values in the middle ground, and my lighter values in the background. So here's the finished sketchbook page again, and this is typical. I might have a couple of these or several for any particular painting. And as I work through the sketching and the value study portion of it, one of the things I didn't talk about is edges. And all the while as I'm moving through this process, I'm thinking about my edges because I want to plan where my hard edges are going to be, where my soft edges are going to be. The reason that's important, in particular with the soft edges, it's very difficult to come in late in the process and start injecting soft edges. You have to build on those. So that's something that I established early in my painting process, and it helps me to know where those are going to be. In this instance, I have this tree to the right, which doesn't have any leaves on it, just a bunch of branches, which kind of forms a soft, smoky shape, but it's a very soft shape. So I need to incorporate that at the right time in my painting process. I know early on that I want to probably accomplish that by working wet and wet with lighter values. One of the most important pieces of information I'll take away from this problem solving and planning process is where my lightest lights and pure whites are going to be. Because I work transparent, I need to plan for those and make decisions before I begin my painting process. Am I going to paint around those white and light areas, or am I going to use something such as a liquid mask or a frisket to protect those areas throughout my painting process? And this is my finished painting titled Early Snow. It was very important for me to go through the process I just described because there's a lot of whites in this winter scene and there's soft edges, and it helped me to know that ahead of time before going in to accomplish the finished painting. It would be very difficult to do some of that without that planning and problem solving stage before I began. So next time you're going to do a painting, think about these 3 steps to success. Draw your shapes, plan your values and edges, and then begin your painting process. I think you'll find it helpful.